The first season of The Amazing World of Gumball is very different from the other seasons, having a very experimental animation style that varied a plethora of inconsistencies and overall just wasn't really refined and didn't really pop. The season itself contained plots that were very basic, or at least the way said plots went from point A to point B weren't as captivating or entertaining due to the animation not being as fast-paced or crazy as the later seasons became. But does that mean that the season is bad? Well, a lot of people actually highly regard the season or even claim it to be the best, taking a liking to the simpler style and pacing. Whether that be because they genuinely like the episodes or are just nostalgic for them, I'm not really sure. So now we'll actually look back at some of these episodes from the worst to the best to hopefully answer the question, is The Amazing World of Gumball Season 1 bad? Beginning with the classic, the DVD, which begins with Gumball's mom Nicole asking him to return a DVD so she doesn't get a fine. And Gumball tries to get her to do it and argues with her about it, but she convinces him by punching a hole in the door. Gumball then goes into the kitchen only to find Darwin using said DVD as a pizza cutter. So he tries to clean it with a sponge but accidentally uses the wrong side and scratches it, and then accidentally drops it in the sink, which shreds it completely. So Gumball and Darwin go to the movie store to deliver a fake DVD only to then receive a red letter telling them that they have to pay for it. So Gumball and Darwin go to the streets to make some money to escape facing the consequences, or aka facing their mother. But then a homeless person takes their money, and as they try to take it back, he growls at them, which for some reason they then turn into a beat, which then gets them more money, which then the homeless person takes from them again and then uses to win the lottery. Yeah, this is very classic Gumball Season 1 humor. But believing that they now have to get a job, Gumball asks Darwin if he can cook or drive, which he says no to. But when he asks Darwin if he can speak Chinese, of course Darwin speaks Chinese. This was actually pretty funny. We then have another kind of Family Guy cutaway joke bit, with them applying for a job where they put on makeup, and Darwin flaunts his beauty and Gumball not so much. And then the girl letting them work here screams before we cut to the next scene. Like I said, very Family Guy cutaway joke-esque. Kind of funny, but in a really dumb way. Their mom then calls him saying that she's coming home, and Darwin tries to get him to tell the truth, but Gumball says that he's gonna download the movie before Darwin has a pretty funny scene where he gets really serious saying piracy is stealing, a pretty meta joke from the writers. But their mom then gets home and sees the letter and yells at the boys to let them know they're in trouble. So they then run from her to the store, which is probably the best scene from this episode, as we get our first look at the talent of animators on the show and how quickly the style and pacing can change, as well as just the overall mixture of 2D and 3D within the world and its characters, which was obviously a concept utilized to the fullest extent and really made this show what it is. But they then give Larry another fake DVD where they reenacted the events within the movie, but obviously Larry couldn't take it, so they plead to him, telling him the whole story of how the DVD got destroyed and for him to not tell their mom. But of course she was right behind them. But hearing this, she lost her anger, and then with the fact that it was only $25, she tells them that there's nothing they could do that'll ever stop her from loving them, which was pretty wholesome. The pacing was dragged at times and the joke scenes weren't the best, but some were somewhat funny. The best part definitely was them running from their mom, and then her making them feel like they don't have to be scared to tell her the truth, and the overall life lesson about responsibility from it. This episode is solid and probably one of the best in the season. It's a lot of people's favorite episode as well from the season, or just in general, and I can see the appeal, so no, this episode definitely isn't bad. But moving on to the next episode on the list, which is the episode The Third. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin have 24 hours before they go back to school, so they decide to play Dodge or Dare, only to quickly realize they're bored of it, or that they're actually maybe just bored of each other. So the two decide to go look for a new friend to add to their group, which was a really good way to introduce some new characters in the show at the time, such as Banana Joe, who is really a like or dislike, whether you're fond of fart jokes or just really stupid type of humor. And we then meet Bobbert the robot, who Gumball teaches how to play Punchy, which ends with him just getting punched through a wall, which was hilarious. Leslie the Flower, who actually introduces himself and just tries to insert himself in the friend group in a really creepy and obsessively lonely manner, which was obviously off-putting to Gumball and Darwin. So they go to the bathroom to lose him, only to be overheard by Tobias, who flexes all of his characteristics, being athletic, rich, colorful, which at first they think is really cool. Then he says he'll only be their friend for $20, making Gumball question the type of person he is, but Darwin wasn't really bothered by it, as he starts talking about Tobias and how great he is at dinner, which of course upsets Gumball. One, because he understands that he's fake, and two, because now he's just jealous, which honestly fair enough. Gumball then hangs out with Alan the balloon to try to make Darwin jealous, and the two do multiple things where Alan clearly needs hand spores, so they have a reoccurring joke where Alan says that he doesn't have hands, which was really funny. And also Gumball just gives him a different name every time he says it, which was also hilarious. Nonetheless, Alan tells Gumball to go to Darwin before he loses him, and so we get this pretty cool animated scene of Gumball riding a bike to Tobias' house, really mixing the 2D model of Gumball with the 3D realistic background. I don't know, the blend and mixture between these two elements is really cool to see. So this was hands down probably the best scene of this episode. But Gumball then arrives at Tobias' house where he finds Darwin in a different room crying, missing Gumball. And so the two reunite, saying that they'll be best friends forever. They then play a game together, and Tobias asks if he could plug in a third controller, and they just flat out say no and smile at each other. Seeing the two go through some form of life lesson or difficult event that somehow brings them closer is always wholesome. The overall duo dynamic between them is also definitely one of my favorite parts of the show, and it's really utilized in this season a lot more than the others, I feel. But yeah, this episode is pretty good as well. I really want to see that scene of Gumball going to Tobias' house reanimated though. I feel like that would be sick. Next up is the Laziest, and in this episode Nicole gives Richard a list of chores to do before she leaves, and as soon as she's gone he sits back on the couch, and then Gumball and Darwin come up wanting to play a game with him, so he tricks them into taking out the trash, and then they come back inside insisting to Richard that from now on they will be the lazy ones. So Richard makes a deal with them that if somehow they manage to find someone lazier than him, he'll do their chores for a day, with the latter being that if they don't, they'll have to do his chores for the entire rest of their lives, which for some reason they say is fair enough. Personally, I am not taking that deal. But the lazy off between Richard and the boys then begins as they watch TV and eat chips and drink soda, but all of that sugar quickly had the boys unable to sit still, as we get this cool animated scene where we go into Gumball's body and see the sugar cubes dancing and tickling his heart, and their voices then get pitched up and they start moving really fast as they go to look for someone else who can beat their father in this lazy off, as they obviously can't. They then stumble upon some old people sitting outside who try to tell them this tale of a guy named Lazy Larry, but Gumball and Darwin sink to the ground, and I thought it was because they were just instantly bored, but they were reaching a sugar crash, as we get another animated scene of a depressed sugar cube singing. I honestly really like how they brought back the bit from earlier to create another kind of woke joke scene, but they then ask Larry if he is this supposed Lazy Larry, and he says that no one else calls him that anymore. He tries to tell the tale, but they cut him off, and so he puts it bluntly, saying that he was once the laziest person in Elmore, before he of course lost his title to none other than Richard Watterson. He says that he can't enter the lazy off as obviously he has a job, a car, a house, a girlfriend, but despite this, the boy still persists, asking and asking until he eventually yells at them and gets fired. I actually really felt bad for him here, like he's just trying to work and get home to his girl, man. And then they manage to make his life even worse, as they keep bothering him until the point where he drives his car off of a cliff. And then right as he's about to propose to his girlfriend, Gumball and Darwin are outside of his window, causing him to just freak out, and of course it results in her leaving him. They genuinely ruined his entire life in the span of like 5 minutes, and of course because of this he turns back in the Lazy Larry. And then they go back home to tell their dad, and they try to call him, but then they get a voicemail of him saying that he's too lazy to pick up the phone. And so round 2 of the original lazy off starts, as they then have a yawning competition, and then when they get hungry, Richard says that he'll have a slice of pizza, so he blows a paper which rolls a pen into a skateboard that then runs into a chair which hits the pizza box, sending the slice flying through the air onto Richard's face. And Gumball tries to reattempt this, but a toaster comes back flying, smacking Darwin off the couch. Darwin didn't deserve that, but it had me dying of laughter. Gumball then gets bored watching the channel on their TV and sends the button on his pants flying to change it, and Richard just forfeits just like that. But when their mom gets home and sees that Richard is doing the chores and they're just on the couch not helping, they of course get yelled at, and then she tells Richard to basically get back on the couch and have the boys do the rest. So despite everything, he wins the lazy off after all, but also made everything Gumball and Darwin did to win feel kind of like a waste of time, especially with the whole ruining Larry's life and turning him back into Lazy Larry just for him to not show up also felt just kind of wasted. I would have honestly preferred to see Richard and him go out in a super intense lazy off, as we saw even during the one with Richard, Gumball, and Darwin just being in this room doing nothing. The episode managed to still be really captivating, utilizing every object and piece of the room or even their clothes to interact with things or get the things that they want. It felt very creative in that sense. I really like like that aspect of the episode, but everything else really just, yeah, felt like a waste of time. In the episode The Ghost, Gumball and Darwin eat some bomb-ass sandwiches in front of Carrie, the ghost, who finds this to be insensitive because she can't eat. Darwin then says that she can use Gumball's body, and despite Gumball trying to stop her from doing so and not wanting her to do so, she does it anyway. But then with all the sensations and feelings of being alive and being able to taste food, she instantly begins to go rabid, wanting more and more. And then we get this sick first-person shot of her running through town and just devouring food and eating the donut cop after he tries to stop her. And Gumball then wakes up obviously feeling terrible and says that he doesn't want to do that again. But then Carrie asks him if she can use his body again to eat her sandwich. Gumball hesitates but says okay, only if you eat just the sandwich and nothing else. But we then cut to her once again just eating everything, going on an absolute rampage. Darwin then gets him to drink this extremely disgusting water to make his body uninhabitable for Carrie, but she just says that it makes her even hungrier. And then we cut to Gumball walking into the living room extremely fat. So he then tries to make up a lie to get her out of taking his body, but midway through just gives up, realizing how unbelievable it is, and just says, fine, you can take my body. And we then see him just absolutely massive, asking his mom for advice, and Nicole tells him that when he says no, he really has to mean it. And the next day, Gumball goes to school and tells her no confidently, but then she just says that she's gonna take it anyways, resulting in the two to fight over his body and who's in control, which was really dark but looked pretty cool. After eating a literal flip-flop, leaves Gumball's body, but after saying that now she has to go back to her miserable, foodless life, they bring Carrie over to their house and say that she can take Richard's body, ending the episode with him tearing up the kitchen and Nicole telling him no but unable to stop him. Or at least that's what it sounded like. This episode gives a good message and life lesson overall to listen to people when they say no, or vice versa, how to say no when people make you try to do things you don't want to, which obviously can be very serious at times. It also shows how hard it can be to say no, and at the end that despite it, the person you're telling to stop doing whatever they may be doing might not listen. A very real thing that obviously happens. It's good that they touched on all sides of the topic, and it's for sure a very important subject to discuss, so props to them for that. Obviously, I like this episode for the overall message, but I also really like the first person scenes of Carrie going in Gumball, and all the jump cuts where Gumball tries to get her to not do so, and then we just see him fat. That was pretty funny. This is definitely one of the best episodes of the season. The Gi. Gumball and Darwin ask their mom if they can take karate classes, and she says yes, but tells them that they better not quit, as we then see that they've quit about every sport they've attempted to play in the past. And Gumball and Darwin then mess around as they pretend to do karate until going to school, still wearing their outfits, and of course for this get instantly laughed at by everyone. And Nicole, seeing this, tries to ask them about it, but they just think they were laughing with them and not at them. So Nicole tries to get Richard to help, but of course just joins in with them, which leads to her to believe that if they keep this up, they're gonna end up not getting girlfriends or jobs and just live there for the rest of their lives. Before we transition into the future where we see them just fat sitting on the couch, she then tells them that their dad was also like this when he was in school, pretending to be the Cottontail Cavalier, wearing a cape and of course getting bullied for it, which made them realize that they didn't want to end up like that. So the two then look out the window and sing a duet about the expectations that people have on them, and that now they would have to say goodbye to their childhoods and their dreams before burying the outfits under their bed, but almost instantly end up putting them back on, which was pretty funny. They then try to wear them to school the next day, wearing a different outfit over them so their mom wouldn't notice, but she quickly realizes and begins to drive to their school. But meanwhile, Gumball told everyone to assemble outside to watch him break 12 wooden boards, but he fails and gets laughed at, so he tries to do one but fails and gets ridiculed for it and called names until he starts to cry. But Nicole then pulls up and sees this and realizes that she's too late, but then the goat Penny comes up and says to leave him alone, and that if he wants to wear those clothes, to let him, because at least he's brave enough to be himself. Which, hearing this, obviously makes Nicole very happy as someone is actually standing up for him, in the same way that she stood up for Richard. Gumball and Penny then do karate together and laugh, and Nicole realizes that her son is in love, which makes her even happier. So she goes home and gives Richard back his cape and gives him a kiss before the episode ends. This one had me feeling almost emotional. Gumball and Darwin getting bullied over being kids and having fun, and then being told to stop by their own mother, leading to a fire duet between Gumball and Darwin, and then them continuing to wear the outfits anyways and seeing the instant repercussions of it, with everyone laughing at them, but then Penny coming in to carry the entire episode on her shoulders with one scene, telling the whole class to leave them alone, and the overall just comparison between Gumball and Penny and Richard and Nicole. They set up Gumball and Penny becoming a thing in the future so well. So I actually love this episode. The robot. During During recess, the other kids ask Bobber to kick their ball, and he ends up kicking it into the sun, and then they all bully him for being a robot, but despite this, Bobber is still hurt and walks away, before Gumball and Darwin notice and ask him what's wrong. Bobber then tells them that he wishes that he was a real boy, so Gumball and Darwin try to teach him what emotions are and how to be cool, but the next day, Gumball goes to school and sees that his stuff is gone from his locker, and that he has already had lunch apparently, and then we see Penny talking to none other than Bobber, pretending to be Gumball, before we see her kiss him. So Gumball of course confronts him, but Bobber tells them that he's him, but just better. So Gumball says that he'll see how long he can keep convincing people, but then he goes home to his doors locked and then sees his family eating dinner with fucking Bobber. And then they all say that he's like Gumball, but just better, before hugging him. And Gumball then begins to cry as he has to sleep outside on the ground, knowing that he's been replaced and now has even lost his family. This was actually really sad. The next day, Gumball attacks Bobber, but he turns on his self-defense mode and attacks back. But Gumball tells him to fight like a man. When he tries to hit him, it obviously hurts, as he's a robot, but then he sends Gumball flying, and Darwin tries to help him, but he punches him instantly, which was funny. Thankfully, the water sprinklers turn on and stop Bobber, and give them a chance to reboot him, ending the episode with Bobber back to his normal self. This is a pretty whatever episode, pretty basic, but still fun. Definitely one of the weakest ones so far though. The picnic. Miss Simeon takes the class on a picnic field trip, saying that they're gonna avoid the Forest of Doom. But of course, Gumball and Darwin weren't listening and think that they're supposed to go through the forest. And then on top of that, the class leaves without them, so they had no one to tell them otherwise. And as they walk through the forest, we see why it's named the Forest of Doom, as there's evil trees and evil squirrels that literally say they're gonna eat their carcasses, as well as some sort of wind spirit that tells them they're going the wrong way, but Gumball just tells Darwin that it said they're going the right way. I don't know why. But they then continue through the forest and see a bunch of different monsters with all pretty cool artistic designs, but they hide away and eventually start to get hungry, so hungry to the point where Darwin literally tries to eat Gumball, so he says that he's on his own. But Gumball then quickly gets surrounded by the monsters, so Darwin comes back to save him by just slapping the monster and calling it bad like it was a fucking dog. And Gumball then says that he sprained his ankle, so Darwin has to carry him back, which somehow he managed to do, as they make it back and begin to just eat the trash. But Miss Simeon then tells everyone to get back on the bus, and of course they're left behind. This one was definitely better. Gumball and Darwin going through this terrifying forest filled with these monsters with once again very cool designs, and just trying to fend for their lives was pretty fun. The genius. Darwin is taken away by the government because he got 100% on a test, and Principal Brown tells them that they're never gonna see him again, so Gumball decides that he's gonna prove that he's a genius too, so he can save him. Meanwhile, Nicole and Richard cry, saying that no one can replace Darwin, before Rocky asks if he can crash at their place, which we'll get back to. But Gumball then goes to the library to learn, and yeah, Nicole dresses Rocky up as Darwin, clearly trying to cope with him being gone, but was really creepy. Gumball then goes on a training arc with his brain, who just becomes an actual character for the rest of the episode. But then he tries to take a test to prove that he's a genius, but his brain just smacks the fuck out of Principal Brown. So they go home only to see that his mom has replaced Darwin, but then he gets sent back as he's obviously not a genius. But they say that they still owe them one genius, and then the brain then puts the blame all on Rocky, and of course everything goes back to normal. This episode was really weird to say the least. The government taking Darwin away for passing a test, and then how serious and yet unserious it felt, and just the really unnecessary involvement of Rocky for like 2 scenes. Definitely not the best episode in season 1. The wand. Gumball and Darwin get a star wand from their cereal box, and despite it not working, Richard comes over hearing this and says that with this he can make all of his wishes come true. Before we get a flashback to his childhood, where Richard tried to use a bone to make a wish, but his mom told him that magic isn't real and is a fraud, which caused Richard to scream for 15 years apparently, even through his wedding. But Gumball and Darwin then decide that they're gonna make whatever Richard wishes come true, as obviously they don't want to hear him scream for another 15 years. So they fix the sink for him, make it rain pancakes, make it Christmas every day, making him feel like he was taller by shrinking everything in the house, giving him a monster truck t-shirt, making Mr. Robinson look ridiculous, making his wife's head a watermelon, and then tying them up. All of this actually making them believe that he is a wizard. But realizing that this wand is making their dad evil, Gumball and Darwin try to stop him, but at the same time don't want to make him believe that magic isn't real and make him scream again. So they continue to do every wish that he makes in their fight with him, even turning inside out and swapping faces. This was actually some body horror. But eventually, when enough is enough, Gumball and Darwin actually tell him the truth. But because Gumball and Darwin spent their entire day to try to make his wishes come true, he was still very happy and told them to give him a hug, which was very wholesome. But then, of course, realizing that magic isn't real, he starts to scream, which was, of course, pretty funny as well. This episode was fun. Gumball and Darwin just kind of hanging out and helping their dad make his dreams come true. And then the ending kind of being wholesome, but really funny. Yeah, just a pretty good episode. The curse. Everyone's waiting outside the bathroom bathroom because Gumball is in the shower, and then we see him singing in the shower because he got in there first, saying that it's gonna be a wonderful day, but then he trips on the soap and then falls in the toilet and flushes it, bringing him into the sewer. And then when he gets out, he sees Darwin and Anais getting on the bus to go to school, and as he tries to get in, he gets his finger slammed in the door. Gumball then says it's not his day, but that's okay, and begins to sing a song, but then gets fucking stomped on. This episode is easily already the funniest. Gumball's bad luck then continues, as instantly when he gets to school, he gets yelled at by Principal Brown to go get new clothes from the Lost and Found, but Rocky then gives him some embarrassing ass clothes, which obviously make him get laughed at. And Gumball then yells at them, but then Principal Brown hears it and gives him 7 hours of detention. He then tells Darwin that he thinks that he's cursed, and so the two go outside to look for a 4-leaf clover, so hopefully Gumball can get some luck. And as they're looking, a football lands near them, and Gumball says a lucky football and just gets fucking kicked into the goal. Darwin then comes up and says that he figured it out, as the day before, as Darwin and Gumball were setting up dinner, Gumball tripped and knocked everything over, but it perfectly landed on the table. So they go with the theory that Gumball used up all of his luck, and so today is just really unlucky, so if he makes it through today, everything should go back to normal. But Gumball then has to go to detention, and Principal Brown says that he has to leave, and Gumball begs him not to, as he knows that something bad is about to happen when he does. And then as soon as he does, the light on the ceiling breaks, causing pencils to fly at him, and then water drips down into an outlet, so Gumball leaves the room, and Principal Brown asks him what he's doing, and then everything just explodes. And then Gumball gets sent into ongoing traffic, and the back door of a truck opens and unleashes a bunch of tires, which he has to avoid, which then causes a cell phone tower to be destroyed and just knock over a bunch of cell phone towers, which then causes another truck to stop, and he ducks under it, but then quickly realizes that this bridge is going nowhere, as he flies right off and then wakes up in a hospital surrounded by his family. But his family says that the doctor said that he was extremely lucky to have waken up. So with this extreme luck, they all wish for a ticket to Daisyland, which we then see fly out of Tobias' family's hands and just go to these multiple different places until eventually landing right in a fan in front of them. And Darwin then says, yay, I wished for snow. So maybe that's why it didn't work, I guess. Once again, another just fun episode. Gumball trying to survive a curse and everyone else trying to help him. Seeing all these events that occur without Gumball literally doing anything, showing that trouble literally just follows him wherever he goes, which is an actual thing that happens in a lot of episodes for some reason. But focusing on it as like an actual plot was pretty cool and made for a pretty good episode. The fight. Gumball tells Anais that school was awesome and that he was hanging out with Tina the T-Rex, that she taught him how to donate to charity as she was just taking his money, helped him tear through his homework, which was literally just ripping it, and having lunch together, but it was just Tina slamming his face in his food. So Anais then says that he's clearly getting bullied, and Anais then calls up Tina and says that the two should have a face-to-face to settle this, and Tina of course takes this as they should have a fight, and tells her to tell him to meet outside the school tomorrow. He then gets his dad to try to help him learn a move to fight her, but Richard is of course of no help, and so they go to ask for some real help from Mr. Small. But as they say that Tina is bullying him, he literally pisses the color out of himself. Darwin then makes him a suit to protect himself, but then to test it out, he literally just starts smacking the fuck out of him, but he still gets hurt by it obviously, and so Gumball is forced to face this fight, but then runs away and slides throughout the lunchroom in this pretty cool shot, and then he continues to run throughout the hallways, and once again just a really cool shot. But he then tries to get into Mr. Small's room, but he slams the door in his face, and we cut back to him being home now with a black eye. And then Anais tells his mom that he's getting bullied, and then we see Nicole driving with Gumball looking absolutely pissed. She then says that she's gonna have a talk with Tina's dad, and Tina then comes up yelling, and Nicole just tells him to sit, which was actually just aura. Gumball and Tina then have a talk, Gumball asking if she's bullying him, but Tina's saying that she just thought they were having fun. Tina's saying that everyone thinks that she's a brew, but she's not, and the two then hug, actually becoming friends, which was really wholesome. Meanwhile, Nicole beat the living shit out of her dad and destroyed their entire house. This was a pretty good episode to end the season. Some good animated shots, and then a deep kind of sad reveal about Tina that brings her and Gumball closer together and actually makes them friends. And then also just gives Nicole that little bit of aura for no fucking reason, but was awesome nonetheless. But this season truly felt like it was just a show testing the waters and gaining their footing with these characters and the animation in general. I wouldn't say it's bad because because of that, but I would say for sure it's still the weakest of the seasons. But there still is a lot to appreciate about it, and a lot of episodes that were nonetheless really fun and still enjoyable. But with that said, that's going to be the end of the video. If you enjoyed it and want to see me talk about other seasons of the show, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all in the next one, whenever that is. Also, I just started a Patreon. I'm posting all of my videos on there, private, public, unlisted, members only, everything. I'll also be posting videos early on there, as well as reaction videos to Gumball and other series as well. So if any of that interests you, or you just want to support me in the channel, the link to join is down below.